Hello, Ryan here, aka Mac, and welcome. Squadron 42's monthly report is now available, so let us take a look. As always, a huge thank you to my patrons and channel members. Thank you guys so much for the support, it is truly appreciated. So kicking off with AI content, they progressed with specific Squadron 42 tasks, including the Cryopod and Simpod usables. Now the Simpod, it says, is a workstation where players or NPCs can train, and once complete, it will be available for NPC gunners to practice their turret skills in a safe place. Now this is kind of like a game station that we had in the hangar module, which was how we accessed Arena Commander, and will be a workstation that we will be able to place in our ships, in our homes, all around the PU, and then use it to access things like Theatres of War, Star Marine, and Arena Commander, and whatever else Firesprite create. It's kind of a game within a game. Now the Cryopod usable, it says, is a cold storage container for preserving humanoids with vital signs displayed on external screens. The first iteration allows NPCs to check the occupant's health on the terminal and clear frost from the pod's window. So that's quite interesting, as these are what slavers use to transport captured bodies. I do wonder if we as players will be able to use them for that purpose, or maybe they'll have a medical use as well. But also these could be the precursors to things like escape pods maybe. Anyway, finally, the animators also polished the motion capture data collected earlier in the year, and this is the last step in delivering the usable interactions initially requested for the Aseado level, which is that big Comore space station that that you're looking at right now. Now for the AI feature team, their main focus was on Vanduul combat behavior, which is heavily focused on melee, allowing the team to progress with the previously detailed combo attack system. New additions include combo attacks to rapidly prototype faster melee animations by adjusting the scale factor that allows them to quickly balance the speed of animations, which will also allow them to alter the pace of close range combat to increase or decrease the challenge to the player. Also, motion warp targeting now updates throughout melee attacks, so characters can readjust their positioning to correctly hit the target. The team also improved the way that staggers can be triggered. Now larger characters can have staggers triggered after sustained bullet fire to interrupt their melee attacks. So a lot of work going on for just melee and close range combat. There must be a few moments in Squadron 42 that require it, which will be fun to experience, maybe not so much against the Vanduul though, but a good robust hand-to-hand system and melee system is always important in games these days. Now for animation, the team worked on various AI behaviors, including purposeful and frantic interactions with consoles, navigation under broken doorways, the breaking of computer servers and vents, and searching over railings and around boxes and vents. Now it's nice to hear that they are creating this sort of panicked animation for all of these scenarios and usables, as this will add a lot of nuance that surprisingly many games just don't seem to bother with, and often you find in the middle of a scene that should have everyone quite frantic and running around, they just kind of casually move around when they're interacting with things. Now the team also spent time working on the Vanduul combat alongside the AI team, blocking out animations for Vanduul breaking through closed or partially closed doorways and breaking equipment. If a Vanduul comes bursting through a doorway, it is going to scare the shite out of me. Also, improvements were made to zero-G gameplay and player ground-based animations. And finally, on the facial side, the team continued with their improvement pass on the next set of characters, plus in-game scenes continued to develop to give narrative life to the environment. Now, for the character art team, they polished the Navy faction of Squadron 42, reworking many old outfits to match the current quality standard, including the bridge officer jacket, battle dress uniform sweaters, and Navy medical staff outfits. They also polished the heads and hair of important characters like Bishop and Treo. So moving on to environment art, they supported a project milestone, helping to bring a visual quality to the work being shown off by the other teams. They also continued to work across a number of chapters, including chapters 5, 12 and 13, and pushed vertical slices to a high visual standard on chapters 7 and 19. I wonder if we'll see those vertical slices, or if they're more for just internal use. Also, further progress was made to creating stellar-looking spacescapes to bring more vibrancy and wow factor to cinematic scenes in space. The audio team continued investigating Squadron 42's systems and planned their future support for the campaign. For cinematics, the team worked heavily on the opening chapter of the game. This received a much-deserved Planet Tech and Vista overhaul. New spacescapes meant that the team needed to assess whether certain shots were still valid or required additional camera scouting to make the most of the new giant Stormwall Nebula. That sounds pretty interesting. I would love to check out this giant Stormwall Nebula. Sounds very fancy. Anyway, the team are always looking at ways to get the best angles and shots so it is as cinematically pleasing as possible, and are often adjusting frames to ensure that they are as good as they can be. Now it says variants of the existing ships like the Bengal were concepted, built and delivered. This is something that I don't quite understand, and I don't think we knew about Bengal variants. Since when did the Bengal carrier have any variants, and what are these variants for? Very interesting. Hopefully we'll hear more about this, or they may keep it quiet until the campaign is released. But do correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we've ever heard about a different variant of the Bengal carrier. Anyway, they also created new ships for the Vanduul fleet as well. Again, nice to hear that they're creating new Vanduul ships. I do wonder if we will see these also before Squadron 42 is released, as the Vanduul ships do look pretty damn sexy now. All the bridge scenes featuring Admiral Bishop, who is Gary Oldman's character, and his Vanduul counterpart progressed as well. Most scenes received their prop and finger control pass, so now all the officers are properly located in their seats, with their hands touching reactive controls and moving as required. For example, fingers grabbing a swivel display properly. Now it's going to look more like a movie, watching all the characters in their seats properly interacting with all the controls. A very nice touch that certainly won't go underappreciated by myself. Time was spent creating reusable stunt sequences of ships battling or getting destroyed that might be viewed by the player from a corridor window or on a ship's bridge during battle. That's going to be quite fun. Walking around whatever the ship is, maybe the Idris, looking out the window and then seeing these ships get exploded and the fight going on. A key turret sequence was fleshed out with cutaways created to distinguish waves and different challenges. This led to a lot of nav splines being drawn up and improved on. And finally, for cinematics, the recent spacescaping, fleet additions, mocap polish and tweaked sun made it possible to rethink the opening shot of the game, making it better and more dynamic. So moving on to the engine team, the physics team spent time on various optimizations, with the process of voxelizing triangular meshes sped up. The team also helped AI code to optimize their update routine for the audio map. Finally, a tree-based quantum grid was implemented that will be used during quantum travel boosting and regular quantum travel to detect collisions and obstacles along the path. Never heard of this quantum travel boosting. Hopefully we'll hear more about that soon. That will be quite an interesting addition. Now for the renderer, significant effort was spent on improving the results of the pipeline profiler for Gen 12 and legacy render paths, which will gain an accurate assessment of how long render and compute passes take to process on the CPUs and GPUs without impacting actual frame rate too much. Significant progress was also made on the Gen 12 transition, with improvements to loading times and massive instancing now supported. Plus, instance buffer management was optimized alongside more improvements. I really do wonder when they're going to reach this milestone 1 with everything running on Gen 12 but still DX11. Hopefully it's by the end of the year, because that would definitely give us some good performance improvements. Also, refactoring was done to the particle code, Light Atlas stage and shader parser, and support for material texture updates was added as well. Improvements continued to be made on the cloud and atmosphere indirect lighting based on the presence of clouds in the atmosphere. The initial part of this work was completed, with work picking up again once planned performance optimizations are in. So in regards to clouds, I know CIG did tweet out recently, if you haven't seen it, do check out their Twitter page, that clouds are coming to Microtech for the Intergalactic Aerospace Expo, so for 3.15.1 on the 19th. Whether it's going to be any other planet but Microtech, we don't know, but it is certainly confirmed that Microtech, as of the 19th of November, when the IAE drops, will have clouds. Very excited to see that. That was a really nice surprise. Now, the core engine team also worked on entity streaming code, which now supports the sphere-based culling needed for Squadron 42. A large refactor was submitted to the entity component update scheduler. This includes a new API that uses updated IDs instead of passes to allow multiple updates per pass. The engine's frame profiler was updated to include various statistics from heartbeat events, as well as a summary of CPU time and memory usage by the dev teams. Now, I'm assuming they are referring to these heartbeats used for the 30k recoveries, and it sounds like they maybe are gathering data from the heartbeats to help further on down the line somewhere. The memory manager was extended to support separate allocation arenas and thread caches per dev team, which means that they can debug memory crashes with more fine-grained memory checks, which typically means the build runs much faster and uses less memory as it would otherwise do. Happy to hear that. Now, moving on to gameplay features. With the base character customizer working in-game, the team continued to prototype the user experience. Several changes were made to remove some hard-coded limits, such as the number of areas on the face players can amend, or the number of heads we can blend between. And we know now for 3.16 we are getting a new DNA head samples and basically a lot more customization options with better looking faces, or more realistic looking faces. Now, the gameplay story team worked on a wide variety of scenes and chapters. Polish work was done across chapter 1, with several scenes updated with new audio, while the Graves walk and talk in chapter 5 progressed as well. A brief scene in chapter 8 received new mocap, while a complicated scene from chapter 12 was currently overhauled. Also, tactile interactions progressed as well. Though difficult to implement, it does make the characters feel more alive and present in the world, and as always, it is the little things that make the biggest difference. So for the graphics team, the improvements made to water volumes continued. This time focus was on how correctly they could simulate volumetric lighting under the surface. Work also started on changes to the material system to allow shaders to become more modular. This is a stepping stone towards building a new suite of shaders that provide more power and flexibility for the artists without always needing complex re-engineering by the graphics programmers. Gen 12 work also continued with more systems being converted. The team are also looking to complete a large refactor of the texture samplers to make them compatible with Gen 12 and Vulkan. Finally, other tasks include new light animation features, technical design work for using damage maps for salvage, gamma correction fixes, and general support for the fires feature. It has been quite a while since we saw anything on the fire feature. Would be interesting to see what the latest progress is there, or maybe when they're expecting to get it into the PU. Probably roll it out with a few ships rather than all of them first. So hopefully we get some updates on that soon. So moving on to level design, the space and dogfighting team continued their work on the expanded patrol spaces, incorporating more optional points of interest in the early parts of the game, with some of the players' actions in these areas potentially having ramifications on future chapters. Now, it has been mentioned in the past that players' choices during the campaign and how you interact with certain characters and your relationships with them will shape what happens to you in the game, maybe giving you more or less access to certain areas. They also worked closely with the ship AI team to create more realistic and challenging AI behaviors to allow for better close quarters dogfighting combat. And having gone through the entire ground-based areas of the game down to the opening door level, the FPS team began fleshing out spaces with AI and new mechanics. Finally, the social design team continued the significant job of implementing all the in-game scenes for the various chapters for review and sign-off, which will be the case for many months to come, but again, great progress here from level design. For the narrative team, they brought improvements to the placeholder dialogue pipeline mentioned in last month's report into action. Now, this revised process allows the team to quickly place newly written dialogue into the game for playtesting. The team also improved a few tutorial scenes to better instruct the player on key gameplay elements. Scenes that are tied closely to gameplay are often continuously improved as development progresses. For QA, they assisted cinematics for regular chapter testing. Also last month, they tested cinematics tools, helping to iron out many of the tool's defects when rendering scenes. They also continued to support the AI team's behavior implementations. Last month's focus was on the Vanduul AI improvements and upgrading existing AI functions. Now for the tech animation team, they continued their long-running task of upgrading the head creation and animation pipeline, with the team saying, "We have rewritten major parts of the DNA system used to create our in-game actors, Coupled with this, we have added support for creating and editing these head assets in Maya through a plugin that shares the same code base and a huge amount of tooling to use it efficiently. This has allowed us to move beyond our current gene pool limits and set our eyes on the future. So great to hear progress on this front. Again, probably one of the reasons why we are getting the updated character creator and head models for 3.16. I am actually, although they don't really add a great deal of gameplay, I am still really excited to see these new heads. Now, they say that all the types of facial rigs are now viable, including animals and aliens, along with the prospect of upgrading or customizing the facial animation rigs for whatever is required in the future. This tech is also being prospectively recruited with more complex forms of deformation. Very exciting to hear this. Now they will be able to start getting the fauna built for the PU, and hopefully we will see this evolve on Inside Star Citizen as well, because I'm very excited to see the creatures and animals that will populate these worlds. Now, Tech Animation are also nearly ready to present the head authoring pipeline they created in tandem with the DNA system. This will give them the opportunity to create new face rigs for the DNA gene pools and tightly control the quality of assets. Additionally, tooling was created to include Alembic cache export in the animation pipeline, which has opened up new opportunities for the animation and tech teams to directly include it in their animation pipeline as an export preference, with the team planning to leverage this tech for some impressive showpieces during Squadron 42. For the UI team, they created decals for a specific level and new building block styles for use on interactive screens in some of the key environments throughout the game. And finally, we have visual effects, who continued to work with cinematics, in particular helping them to populate an epic battle scene with visual effects. So there we have it. That is the Squadron 42 monthly report from October. A load of stuff going on there, making great progress on Squadron 42, and I do wonder how much of it we will see now. I know Chris and the team are hoping to close that out this next year. Whether they will show us any new footage or another vertical slice, I don't know, and I personally really hope so, because I would love to see a comparison between the old vertical slice and the new vertical slice with everything they have added to it. Anyway, with that said, I will be covering the Persistent Universe monthly report, so do keep an eye out for that. And if you do enjoy my content, please do consider subscribing. We have smashed that 40,000 subscriber mark, so thank you all so much. Also, if you want to hang out and talk more about Star Citizen, or just watch me playing 3.15, which is getting a little bit more challenging now that it's in the open PTU, but it is still a lot of fun to be playing, do come and follow me over at twitch.tv/supermacbrothers Ryan. You are all very much welcome over there. Hit the thumbs up if you don't mind. It does the channel a big favor, and tick that notification bell if you would like to be notified when my videos go live. Again, massive thank you to my patrons and channel members. Cannot do this without you guys, so thank you so much. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.